Oh, hey, yo, Sopranos podcast fans, it is season 4, episode 5, betting terminology. Each of us is alone in the fucking universe. That's a quote from Junior Soprano in this episode, season 4, episode 5 of The Sopranos, entitled Pie Oh My, written by Robin Green and Mitchell Burgess and directed by Henry Bronchtein. Pie Oh My. I thought of right away, though the placement is a little bit different. I thought when I watched this a little bit of the Telltale Mozzarella in season 3, in that this is not an episode that is outwardly very explosive or climactic, but it does a lot of interesting things in the way of setting some good story up and moving our characters in the direction that they need to be moving. And I also found it the particular stuff they're doing very interesting. I like this episode. It's not perhaps as tense an hour as The Wait, but a good hour of The Sopranos. I left feeling satisfied. I was a little bit overwhelmed. If whelmed is I was whelmed is the norm. Like, I left feeling satisfied. I was like, this is an above average, fun hour of The Sopranos. Not entirely explosive or crazy, but good stuff. I'm Chris D'Amato.
I'm Paul Mancini.
And I'm Jordan Hugh.
What are your thoughts on Pie Oh My?
It was a very bleak episode. I don't want to say sad. Sad is sort of the wrong flavor here, though there is, of course, sadness in this episode. I just, I feel so bad for everyone in this episode. I guess it's kind of a downer. I really like the episode a lot. I agree, Chris. It's a setup episode, but I'm used to more pep and energy in terms of like the emotion of a setup episode. This felt like, hey, we're positioning things and everything is positioned to go bad. You know, there was not like anything where I was like, oh, this will be a wonderful development. I was just like, wow, this is just a grim setup episode that just points to like life is just a meaningless fucking husk. I don't know. I thought this was quite a dark episode. I know like nothing truly horrible happens in this episode, but just this uneasy making that the episode does. I'll articulate more as we go scene by scene, but I was just I was definitely left uncomfortable at the end of this episode of setup, just being like, wow, you have just set us up for just terrible things.
Well said. This is an interesting episode. A lot of it is set up. As we mentioned in the last episode, this is a bit more a thread with other storylines we're following. Certainly the difficulties in Tony's marriage. We're following the difficulties that Bobby's having following the death of Karen, as well as Junior's ongoing trial. And I think there is something bleak, certainly in the loneliness of the characters and how they tend to that loneliness. But there's something very intriguing about it as well. I love the setups here. I think most interestingly, what ends up happening with Pie Oh My, and ultimately comes to the end of the episode, which is far and away the best tableau that ends any episode of The Sopranos. There'll be more to say. It's very rich. I think it gets to something very important about Tony that also is going to carry us through a lot of this season.
Well said, guys. It definitely is bleak. What's funny, I was just thinking about this as you were saying this, Jordan. There's an upcoming episode, and it's an episode I quite like for various reasons. And the title of the episode, no spoilers about the plot, obviously, but the title of the episode is Everybody Hurts. And I think there's multiple episodes in season 4 that title could apply to.
Yeah. Like, not even the fucking horse is spared in this episode.
Yeah. Speaking of horse, we open at the Crazy Horse. Tony and Syl show up. Some average band is playing on the show, and they're going at it.
That's generous.
I don't like to be too critical. Who knows? Who knows if this is the bands that are at Adriana's club are selected on the show for a reason. So
yeah.
I enjoy the angles we get here. Tony's receiving a simple phone call from Carmela about, did he talk to the accountant or whatever? So this is an ongoing thing. I mentioned this in the last episode, the format here where this stuff going on at home with Tony and Carmela is going to continue under each of the plots that are happening. It's ongoing. It's a direct continuation of him talking to his accountant about the trust and the stock portfolio and all the stuff that Tony was quote unquote bored by in the previous episode. So, but then we get these odd angles and a metallic distortion of the music as Adriana's paranoia of what she's doing. She's ratting for the feds now. And she's just having these flashes of Tony talking about fucking her face up before he kills her. She's snitching for the feds. It's, I think, an effective, cool way of getting her fear and anxiety across there. And they really do a good job making Tony look evil and insidious in those little cuts there.
It's a shame that this nightclub turned out to be what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Because we know Adriana has this interest in music, and it almost feels like mocking that it was just like, hey, here's this nightclub that you can run. But really, it's just a front for the shit we want to do.
Mm-hmm. And maybe, and Chris, anyway, later on, it intimates that the feds probably don't know about it. We know that they do. But yeah, it's a new business venture, so they feel comfortable dragging a guy who's pissing himself into the basement for a beating for whatever fucking reason. And she's privy to that. A guy named Giovanni. We're going to come back to that later. But she steps out. She's snooping. She's keeping an eye out. She can't just do what she perhaps might want to do, which is turn a passive eye and just say, oh, not seeing that, not seeing that. She has to look and explore and figure out what's happening. I do feel bad for her. This is her club being taken over by the mob. Not that it was ever hers really to begin with, but this has to suck for her that this is happening and she can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would seem like it could be, at least from her perspective, a place for her, even like a kind of haven. It turns out it's really supposed to be a haven for the mob, and Tony by the end will seek out a spiritual haven, not at the club, but with an actual horse at the stables. And this haven is not safe. It's not safe for Adriana. It's not really safe for the gangsters either.
Cut to Janice, who is simultaneously watching Jerry Springer and Bobby's house down the road.
Did you guys feel like she's channeling Livia, like with the binoculars, spying on people?
Absolutely.
She's at Livia's house.
Remember Olivia with the
sure.
remember Livia with the blackmail woman in season 1? What's she doing now? And then her mushrooms are burning. So very Livia-esque, of course. I think it's in Livia's kitchen. She's looking Jojo Palmisi, Mikey Palmisi's wife from season 1. It's been a while since we've seen her. Interesting there.
I like that they looped her back in.
Yeah.
That was cool. Also, of course, I had this moment to think about, and we could discuss this in just a bit. Yeah, there's something about these women where like they don't want to leave the universe of the family. So suddenly Bobby becomes very attractive to probably a number of people who their husbands are dead in this line of work. And it's like, how do I stay connected here? Oh, look, I can fill in here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's very interested, clearly. Yeah, she's one of these widows that are lingering and hovering around Bobby at this time. And Janice, what's sad, though, is JoJo's single because her husband, piece of shit that he was murdered.
Right. Horrible, yeah.
Janice is single because she shoved Ralph Cifaretto down a set of stairs. So...
yes.
One of these people.
Well, and prior to that, she killed her previous partner.
Yeah, so one of these people has made her bed in a way that the other hasn't, yet Janice still feels the need to muscle in. And we're going to see several examples of it throughout this episode. This is a great Janice episode in the sense that she uses her passive-aggressive, manipulative tactics in such a great way here. The way she asserts dominance in the scene with JoJo and the other underhanded shit she's going to do throughout the rest of this hour while looking like she's a source of hope and inspiration is just classic Janice. You feel shitty about it, but it's good writing for this character. She's so devious.
Sure.
But she makes JoJo feel thoroughly awkward, brings up when JoJo mentions the idea of Bobby's kids and her kids playing. She mentions little Mike's stint with how's he doing with the Ritalin. Has to bring that up. Just real, and I mean this in a non-disrespectful way, but just real bitchy stuff here. Just they're passive aggressive needling from Janice here, and JoJo is getting the hint.
Yeah, the kid's got enough friggin' problems. I mean, the ADD is probably hereditary because his dad couldn't shut the fuck up or keep his mind on one thing at a time. Yeah, I mean, this whole sequence is great. Going back to Christopher, when all this kind of got started up, it does seem as though, as genuinely as Janice can feel anything, she does genuinely like Bobby and was touched by him.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But even after muscling JoJo out of the way, it seems as though she doesn't quite have an in, because Bobby is still just completely grief-stricken. So, as you said, Chris, great writing in typical Janice fashion, she will immediately maneuver to manipulate a way in, right?
Yes.
So.
JoJo brought over the chicken marsala. They're all still bringing over. I have to share this because she's been on the podcast, and I don't think she'd mind me sharing this story. Lily and I watched this episode together, and Lily said to me when she saw Bobby being all upset about it and crying, she's like, "Would you be that sad if I died?" And I'd be like, "Actually, Lily, I'd be worse because I wouldn't have a bevy of Italian housewives bringing me plates of food." I would pretty much just trudge out to Burger King or something and just eat alone in the rain for a couple weeks. So I just thought that was funny. But yeah, so he's got all these delicious food in front of him, but he's grief-stricken. He can't enjoy it. But I want to mention this because it's going to come back in a few minutes. JoJo tells him 350-degree oven for 20 minutes on the chicken marsala. She leaves. Janice takes the marsala. She's going through the freezer. I like this idea that she can identify, and she's not the only one, by the way, who does this. Later on in the episode, Junior identifies a dish this way. But I love that she's going through and is able to identify who made what based on what it is. That Gabriella did the stuffed shells, and then she pulls out this tray of ziti, and Bobby immediately gets emotional. That's Karen's ziti, the last one she made before she died. Oh. My heart. I drew a little sad face on my notes. Poor Bobby. Yeah.
I mean, that's another bleak thing, but that is friggin' funny, man.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the way that that food brings up this power. I think he looks at it and starts crying, right?
Yeah.
Immediately.
Now I want CD.
Me too. And again, as if food wasn't already this powerful talismanic force on this show, here's a scene that is directly backing that up and being in this moment, this ziti is not just ziti, and it's not even just the last ziti that Karen made. In some way, I think he feels, once I eat that ziti, my wife is gone, right? That the ziti has become a representative of her person. Yeah. And that is powerful. I actually, I was a big fan of another failed HBO show, True Blood, which is terrible television. But I remember... I think it's the first season, Sookie, who's played by Anna Paquin, the main character on the show. Her grandmother dies on the show pretty early in the show's run. It's not a spoiler. It's one of the first few episodes. And Gran had made a pie that they're all terrified to eat because it's the last pie she ever made. And once they eat that pie, it's like she's gone. And then there is actually a scene, I think, either in that episode or the following episode where Sookie eats the pie and cries. And I'm kind of imagining that moment for Bobby as well. So I get it,
Well said. The feds, just before the scene with Bobby and Janice and JoJo, we did get this little thing where Aid is at a beauty salon talking to her mom, and she gets a call from the feds and summoned to a bakery out in East Hanover, which is out there. I've been in that location. It's definitely far removed from the Sopranos area, which is deliberate. You don't want us to do it in your neck of the woods, do you? So she has to go out there, getting the highlights and a wax. We'll wait. After this scene at Bobby's, she goes there, and we are introduced to a new agent who is going to be handling the Adriana case, Agent Sanseverino. A much older, more serious FBI agent, it feels like, than Danielle and even Agent Harris. This is someone... My theory on this, even though it's not stated explicitly, is the agent who played Danielle was too much of a distraction for Adriana at that point to be productive. There was too much emotion put in there. So they're bringing in Sanseverino to be a cold intermediary between Adriana and the FBI going forward.
Yeah. Also, more food. We're at a bakery.
Yeah, exactly.
They could have been anywhere at this meeting, but it's at a bakery.
As if I couldn't hate these FBI people more. When they call Adriana, the agent who's playing Danielle, Deb, I think is her real name, she says to Adriana, "Don't run or whatever because we have people watching the beauty shop." And she snickers with the other FBI agents. So presumably they tracked her there, or they know she's there, but there's nobody watching the shop and they're just intimidating her.
Yeah.
Like, so my note was like, just fuck these people. That's what I wrote down.
Yeah.
Then in this scene, yeah, I mean, it's well done. It's powerful. We feel for Adriana. She's learning some tough truths about both Big Pussy and Uncle Richie.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I mean, just to speak to how bleak this is, that Jordan mentioned it at the top. Adriana is so vulnerable and pathetically alone in this that she even feels sad when her betrayer abandons her. She even feels this vulnerability when Danielle, this woman, she said, "Eat shit, Danielle," or whatever the fuck your name is. But then when she leaves, Adriana says, "Why?" I mean, that's rough. She is fucking nowhere, you know?
Oof. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even pick up on that. You're totally correct. That's sad.
And only because this came up again this episode, and I'm not sure if it's in this scene or if it's coming up in a short while. I'm pretty sure it's this scene. Adriana seems to have some ongoing stomach issues. She vomited on the table in a previous episode when she's first confronted by Cubitos and the other agents. And in this scene, or maybe it's in the subsequent, I'm not sure, she excuses herself to the bathroom as well. So the stress of this situation is causing her specifically stomach distress. I'm just trying to say, in a culture where food is so nourishing, it seems like this whole situation is literally turning her stomach. And then we're gonna get some. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're going to get some intestinal distress from this horse as well later in the episode. So there's a stomach thing going on here.
Yeah, completely correct. Danielle's last line, or Deb's last line on the way out, is what we talked about, the little creatures. Good luck with that. I mean it. Eat shit. She's not having it. That's something personal. That's a particular, the possibility that Adriana's infertile is a particular source of sadness and never told anybody before, even Christopher. And so she's miserable about that. But that's kind of Deb was trying to have a, hey, woman to woman, good luck with that legitimately. And Abe's like, fuck you, you don't care. And maybe she's right. They try to stress this idea that Chris might be in trouble and you never know what kind of people he's hanging out with. She's insistent Chris doesn't need your help. Well, you don't know where he is half the time. He's hanging out with Tony Soprano and who knows who else. Tony would never hurt Christopher. They dropped this bomb on her about Pussy and Richie that they're not in the program, which is a revelation to her and probably a very sickening one to what Jordan was talking about. It would enough to turn anybody's stomach. And the directive for now from Agent Harris is make Tony's house your primary area of focus for the time being. We'll come back to that. Back at Casa Soprano, Carm has a stock tip on a medical stock from her cousin Brian. Tony, we don't have that kind of money on hand. I'm sorry. What are you going to do? Just don't have it. Next scene is him going out to the bird feed and counting what I have to assume is much more than whatever Carmela was asking for. So he's lying.
Choosing the words carefully. We don't have that kind of money on hand right now. No, we do not, because I'm hiding it from you. Just as he'll choose words carefully later when he says to Ralphie, how's our girl and what should we do?
Mm-hmm. So it's tough. Carm wants to try this out. Tony's not having it. Then we're at a stable. Ralph has bought this horse, Pio Mai. She's about to race. Ralph is upset. The horse, as soon as he bought the horse, it starts losing. Cute little scene here as they're walking through. There's a goat that Tony's warned to stay away from, but they have this exchange about horses having friends. Even Seabiscuit had another horse that went around with him. It's just, of course, we know that.
So this is this is actually the second appearance of Pio Mai.
Yes.
I believe the last time we saw Pio Mai was very briefly in the episode Christopher.
Ralph says, I'm buying her.
Right. And obviously, Pio Mai is featured prominently in this episode. What does this name Pio Mai mean? Did I totally miss a film reference or something like that? Or does anyone have any idea? The only image I can conjure in my head is like the Jeffersons theme song. We finally got our piece of the pie, but that doesn't really fit, does it? I don't really know what pie oh my means. And horse names are famously like weird, but they usually reference something. If not about the animal, then about the owner. It seems like a really deliberate, fun, cool name. And I'm like, is there a story to this? You know?
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know what the story is like in the world of the show. All I can think of is what it brings up. So there's, of course, the term piece of the pie.
Right.
Money floating all around this episode. Of course, I thought of Tony's appetite.
Sure.
In that pie is brought up.
Yeah, but, it's a cute name. I was wondering, I was like, does Paul have like some deep cut like gangster film reference? Like, oh well, Pie O My was, I don't know, you know.
Oh, I wish.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think, as you said, also there's the as we hear from, I think during the race, we hear some other very funny horse names.
Right.
Just
Zucker's mother is the big one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just sort of bopped off in quick succession.
Yeah.
I don't know that there is a specific. It does sound right as far as the name Pie Oh My sounds like one of these cheesy horse names that you'd see at a racetrack. I don't know if there's more to it than that. It does evoke images of pizza pie. There's all kinds of pie. Yeah, Pie Oh My.
I just thought it was interesting. That's all.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I agree. I don't know if there's more to it than that. I haven't been able to find anything on that. But if any of our listeners or fans have a theory on that, we'd love to hear it. Please send it our way. I'm certainly curious if there's some poem or song or something that this is referencing. Throw it at us. I want to know.
My is also a condition of ownership, and that's something that comes up. Ralphie owns the horse. He talks about when it's your horse, it's good. Tony slowly taking the reins, if you will, of the horse. Carmela resents that Tony says, I gave you this, as if this trust in her marriage was not already hers. And a horse doesn't complain about those things. It's a horse. That's one of the things that Tony likes about the environment of the stables. It's quiet. Nobody's nagging him. So I think that could be something too.
I like that. You know, I have to interrupt this. Actually, we're going to get back to the episode in a second. It's so funny that we're covering this episode right now. There's a Twitter account that is called @PieOhMyIsAlive, right? Okay. And it's the Twitter account for the horse that played Pie Oh My. The horse's real name is Goldee. I wish this were, of course, this happens in this episode that is bleak and sad. Just a few hours ago on Twitter, this horse unfortunately just passed away, 23 years old.
Are you kidding?
Oh, come on.
The horse that played Pie Oh My died today.
As we're recording this episode.
Yes, I'm not kidding.
Get the fuck out of here.
No, I'm dead serious. Pie Oh My Goldee passed away this morning after a 4-year struggle with equine Cushing's disease. Goldee was 23 years old.
Guys, that's fucking wild. Come on.
Wow.
That is insane.
What is that? That's insane.
Yeah. That's crazy. That just came up on my Twitter feed like a minute ago. Now
truly wild. That's truly wild.
That is something else. Well, rest in peace, Goldee.
Rest in peace, Goldee. Oh my God.
Oh man.
That's crazy. Wow. That's wild that just happened.
She was a beautiful horse.
Yes, I am freaking out.
R.I.P.
Oh, anyway. Tony offers advice on the race. Hold her back a little bit. Don't let her go right from the get-go. But then it comes out, you don't fuck with a horse's style. Let her run her race. Tony defers to the experts. I love this last exchange here. Tell that midget not to be shy with the whip. And Hesh says if only his mother had taken that advice.
Yeah.
Funny.
Great line.
Yeah. Followed by another hilarious line as we cut to Junior's kitchen. This poor Murf who is looking after Junior in Bobby's stead. That's what you're wearing to court. No response from Murf. He just looks down and shakes his head as Janice comes in. This is what I meant earlier when I said that we're going to see Janice's underhanded, passive-aggressive bullshit through this entire episode. Janice brings Junior JoJo's marsala, JoJo's chicken marsala, tells Murf to heat it up at 350 degrees for 20 minutes, is not going to let Bobby eat this marsala. Awful. Just awful. And it looks like a nice thing. Like, oh, I'm bringing my Uncle June something to eat, but it's Janice doing the right thing for somebody for the absolute most selfish reason possible. And it's not the last time she's going to do that today.
Yeah.
Just terrible. Junior dropping the Shakespeare again. I'm waiting to win. I'm waiting like Patience on a Monument.
Right, which I think we heard him use that line before at some point.
In season 1. I'm waiting
Okay.
like Patience on a Monument for discipline to be handed down when Chris is hijacking the trucks.
Right. So this is one of his like in the pocket things that he says, which is just really cute. And also Bull-Eye's great intelligence. I mean, so that's great.
Yeah. And
just as he goes through Murph's pockets for fucking change.
Yeah.
And so funny too. He's complaining about Murf and about how he misses Bobby. He's been patient. He's not totally shit talking Bobby here, but when I'm waiting here, and then this one with the drives like a little old lady. Gas, brake. Poor Murf. Each of us is alone in the fucking universe. That's our pull quote from Junior.
And it's great. And Patience on the Monument, I didn't mean to say belie. I meant to say it proves Junior's intelligence. He has these phrases that are actually quite good and usable. I feel like he's said that one before too, that each of us is alone. That feels like Olivia-ism, but it is also kind of the theme of the episode. So Paul, amazing pull quote this week. This is the bleakness that I was talking about. Absolutely.
Yes, I wanted to reflect, I think, that bleakness, and I guess how we deal with it. How do we tend to that loneliness? But I guess as to Jordan's point, that brings up the bleak quality, because while there's something very gentle about the ending with Tony, but Adriana sees to her loneliness by taking part in Chris's drug use. It's dark. So that's why I chose that quote. I love this scene. I love this vibe. Chris, you're dead on. Janice and her passive aggressive stuff is very funny. Chris, I remember Johnny said one day Bobby would be your linchpin, but Bobby was a head waiter when Johnny died.
That's so funny. Yeah. Cut to the racetrack. Ginsburg is saying, yeah, stock portfolio, blue chip, do it. Go with God. Make the wife happy. Make the universe stop bugging you for that. Tony laments the days when Carmela wasn't worried about the money. He brought home the money. She took care of the house. That's the way it should be in his mind. And then Ginsburg raises a red flag on the life insurance trust. And Tony says, well, it's got great tax benefits. Yeah, for Carmela when you die. But the problem is it's irrevocable. If something happens, divorce, say, you can't undo it. You'd have to petition the court. And even then it's tenuous. These trusts are very hard to undo. And so that's the advice Tony's accountant's given him. We're going to come back to that shortly, but the race is on and Ralph is very invested. He's bet $5,000. I hate this fucking pygmy. I hate him. He says when Pyomai starts the race in a very far back in the pack. Then Tony's strategy inadvertently wins the day. They held her back for the first part of this longer race, and then Pyomai charged right to the top and won. Ralph screaming, I'm rich. I bet $5,000 on an 8-1. That is, I would consider that rich, certainly.
Yeah.
I love that the legal owner is Ralph's maid. Just so confused, standing there with the photo thing, and just very funny. She looks like.
Did you guys? I can't get over her sweater that says "I love Paris." Just oh my god.
Champagne's all around. Not for nothing, the horse won, but that was not the agreed upon strategy. But it was a fluke. It was an accident. Ralph is feeling celebratory. He just made a killing on this race. He says, Tony, right is right. Here's your taste. He might regret this very soon.
Yeah. This was not an arrangement that Tony put forward. This was not the terms of the bet that anybody agreed upon. Tony did not say, "Hey, if my strategy wins, give me part of the winnings." Ralphie's just trying to be nice here, and it gets taken advantage of.
Exactly.
Tony says to him, "Your money's no good," while looking expectantly at his envelope.
Yeah,
it's very well set up. That at some level, even though you guys are quite right, there's no terms here, but Tony at some level feels essentially just like he's entitled to this, and if and when he wants more, he'll be entitled to that.
More money changing hands here. Tony dropping out Carmela's, what I presume to be, and I use this word in the way that I think they would, Carmela's allowance. Tony brings in the bread. Carmela lays out the expenses and Tony pays for it. That's how it probably works. AJ needs cleats, whatever, etc. After that exchange is done, Tony says, "You got the papers for me to sign?" "Yeah, I talked to Ginsburg." Carmela is pleasantly surprised. "I'm so impressed." Again, the idea that of the emotional labor that the women in these situations have to bear, where simply doing something that is easy and requested of you is impressive.
Yeah. The exchange of money between Tony to Carmela, the allowance, as you put it, I mean, being allowed to see that is no accident. I mean, she says AJ needs cleats, and she asks for, I think, $150 from him. And he was just like, "Oh, in my day, it was 50." It was just like, he is so loath to part with any little bit of money to, feed his own household, but he'll go out and gamble and make wild purchases and things like that. It's just, it's just this mounting focus of just like his lack of care at home.
Well said. And he agrees to sign the papers. He signs a bunch of them, 2 out of 3, but he won't sign the trust. I know this is a very serious and upsetting situation for Carmela, but I have to laugh at Tony's malaprop here because his accountant, Ginsburg, suggested a, quote, inter vivo or living trust. And Tony says, in vitro something. In vitro is nothing to do with any of this. That's a pregnancy without intercourse procedure that can happen. It's just very funny that's a great malaprop. I love when they're able to pull that off. But Carmela is very upset by this. It's irrevocable. Tony's not taking it seriously. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. It's a government. You got to be flexible. And she is absolutely furious by this. And then Tony ducks into the living room, disappears into the newspaper. "Be fair, Carm. I gave you 2 out of 3. You gave me, and here we are. This is not going to be right for the rest of the episode between them. This is infuriating for her. Thoughts on this?"
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like an example of it could have been less bad if. You know what I mean? Like, it's totally fine that Tony talked things over with his accountant, and the accountant had a disagreement with the manner in which the trust was being established. But because Tony has been so neglectful towards Carmela, towards her interests, towards her ideas about security and things like that, this comes off as so much more callous than it really is.
Yeah.
And it's also like he delivers this with no gentleness. He handles this like he would handle one of his underling employees. Like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll sign. Here's 2 things I signed. Oh, you didn't sign the third. Yeah, I'm not going to do that." Right. It's so asshole-ish, right? It's just not appropriate, and it's not brought up in a way that is sensitive. And he already knows she's sensitive about this, so I don't really know why he's being such a dick here. I don't get it.
Just as in the last episode, when Jordan eloquently pointed out some of these unfair elements of body image that are placed upon women, here I think in this episode, particularly with Tony, we're dealing with, I think, a male perspective and an old school male perspective on how to communicate, on how to operate in a marriage. And Tony, for example, in the previous scene where this is set up, he's talking to Ginsburg at the track. He brings up that Carmela is a smart woman as a negative. That's a negative because she'll want to do something else, the living trust, then stock options, investing in the medical stock, then it'll be something else and something else. Then, as Jordan pointed out, kind of weirdly here, he talks to her as if she's an idiot, and it doesn't go well. She doesn't buy it. She's not taken with it. She's frustrated and upset. And then again, like not a perspective that I'm endorsing, but the perspective that an old school guy like Tony has. She keeps bothering him about it. You gave me, and this is a living trust. And what are the terms of a trust, or a bigger concept of trust between dishonest people? Versus what are the terms of trust with a horse? A horse doesn't ask you to sign anything. A horse doesn't ask you to be emotionally available. The horse doesn't blush when you call her girl or baby, which is why Tony's Haven will finally be in a stable.
Yeah.
And not at home.
Absolutely. Speaking of home, Tony and Carmela apparently have invited Chris and Adriana to have dinner with them at their home. And Adriana is faking a flu to get out of it. She doesn't want to. This is her way of avoiding the reality that's been placed in front of her. And Chris says, this is the inner sanctum here. I think Paulie and his Gumars get invited for dinner with them. And Adriana's doesn't want to do it. She was told by Agent Harris to focus on the house. If she were leaning into this, it could be an opportunity here, but she's not. She doesn't want to. And Chris, nothing ever goes my way. Sits down in the living room, shoots up.
Yep.
Not good.
Which, of course, is very on the nose. The other kind of horse in the episode. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Horse, for those of you who don't know, is another word for heroin. So works there on that level.
In typical Sopranos irony, things looking up with Chris getting invited into the quote inner sanctum is a complication for Adriana's storyline. I also have often wondered on the show what the FBI really wants out of Adriana, because she doesn't know very much. And I think actually the only real explanation is that this would be the prize, her proximity to Christopher and his proximity to Tony. That's why they talk about the house being her area of focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm wondering if maybe they're already coming to, I don't know if regret's the right word, but like kind of realize that like Adriana was like not a great person to get because she's not privy to much. You know what I mean? No. She has to like really make extra effort to get anything. It's not so dissimilar to the lamp, right? It's just like you kind of pick the wrong object or the wrong person to use.
Very interesting. I like that.
Christopher, at the beginning of the scene, saying, I'm in the inner sanctum now, and ending the scene by saying, nothing ever goes my way, is vintage Sopranos.
Yeah. Cut to Janice in the kitchen with Bobby and the kids. Bobby's sweet kids. I guess Bobby Jr. found his way out of the garage at some point because he's here having this delicious looking lasagna. The kids are kind of being kids. They were excited about the Fuji blimp over the Willowbrook Mall when they were in the car, but now it's like, so what? It's cute. It's funny. Janice is trying to elicit some discussion. She's being uncharacteristically sweet to Bobby's kids, even though they're being rude to her. She stands there for a second when she could just leave. Oh, smells good, doesn't it? Not leaving. So waiting for Bobby to invite her to sit. So everything she does is calculated. There's no accidents with Janice. Every word, everything she does, every way she moves, it's really amazing to think about. It's exhausting to think about. I couldn't live like that. The kids want to go eat in front of the TV when she's invited to stay. Bobby's like, that's rude. Janice is like, no, I'm the one intruding. Just being great to them. Sits down. Bobby has had some union business to attend to that he hasn't done yet. And Janice, this is why this is frustrating, this whole Janice thing, because on one hand, Bobby needs, and people who are stuck in grief mode, not that grieving is a bad thing. It's a very healthy, normal thing, but Bobby needs to be told, hey, you need to get back to life a little bit. You need to get back to work. You need to be doing something constructive other than just sitting at the table crying and lamenting. You need to get back out there and not lose sight of the ball. But at the same time, this very correct advice he's getting is for the most selfish possible reason. Janice is only gaming for Janice here. So it's one of those tough, fun Soprano situations where it's the right advice for a selfish reason.
Right. I guess the idea being, well, it's more than just that she wants to get with Bobby. It's that she wants to get with him, and also she wants him to be useful, or I guess a better gangster. Right? Is that kind of what we're getting at?
Yeah, and that he will he needs to be jostled out of his grief mode. This is a
Okay.
mode that he's
Oh,
got.
sorry.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
that she can't get past the Karen thing. She can't get if he's stuck in it. And later on in the episode, after he goes out and does that, we'll talk about what he does. But he comes back. It's like, yeah, I'm having a good day. It's the first time Bobby smiled since episode 3.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So despite Janice's faults or manipulation or self-interest, we could say something good came of it, right?
yeah, she's not wrong. When you're grieving a terrible loss, especially a spouse or somebody who's immensely close to you, it never goes away. And if you allow yourself to wallow in that grief, it could be forever. And someone at some point, a loved one needs to tell you, hey, get dressed, shower, go outside, do something, right? So that's what's tough is the advice she's giving him is the correct way forward, but it's tough because it's Janice and we know that she's only thinking about Janice.
Yeah.
And probably the right tact to use, among other things. She warns him that the business is unforgiving. You'll be nobody if you don't take this action. And when he says, I don't care what happens to me anymore, I believe she says, we lose that luxury when we have children.
Yes.
Which can move Bobby. Bobby really, I mean, he loves and cares about those kids, and they might be the only reason that he is hanging on by a thread at this point. But that's also complicated. That this next scene with Bobby is not going to paint him in a good light. We'll get there.
And Janice, again, mentions him very sparingly, but she does mention her son Harpo here, that she had both barrels of a shotgun in her mouth at one point, and her thoughts of her son Harpo growing up without his mother kept her alive. Manipulation in part because Harpo did grow up without his mother. But
right. Though I believed her.
Oh yeah, sure. Certainly.
Yeah. I mean, yes, it's manipulation, I think, but I think she's absolutely someone who has been on the edge of taking her own life more than once.
Absolutely. And anytime Harpo is brought up, it's an immediate nerve for her. Right. We talked about Johnny Sack's berserk button. I think Harpo is the Janice berserk button because Carmela brings it up briefly in one of the very first episodes you ever see her. And she immediately gets emotional. I'm sorry, Carm, can we not talk about him? And moves on. So this is for her to share this with him is big. And she knows that it'll be big, but it's also coming from the most genuine place it's possible to come from for Janice. Cousin Brian's at the stable. There's going to be another race. Tony drops the next bit of advice. Nah, let her blow it away. It's a shorter race. Ralphie's deferring to Tony this time. And there's another race, and Pyomai wins again. Big money. Tony and Ralph clean up.
Yes, however, but Cousin Brian bet to show.
Yes.
Which means like a lot less money. I think I had to look up betting terminology for horse races because it's not something I've ever done. So apparently you could bet to win, which is obviously your horse wins. You can bet to place, which means your horse comes in first or second. I think that's correct. But you don't get nearly the amount of winnings. And then you can show, which is your horse just comes in first, second, or third, but you get a fraction of what the total win would have been, right? So everyone's celebrating this huge victory. Financial advisor Brian, if he would have just listened to the gangsters, could have made a lot of money. Instead, he totally wipes out on this, takes a fucking bath by betting to show, by playing it too safe.
Yeah, exactly. That's so funny. And it's such an interesting way of looking at it, too, because in the movie Casino, there's a scene where Robert De Niro is narrating about this big whale that they had in who was stuck in the casino, and he lowered his bets because he was kind of taking a beating. But then when you start winning, the gambler mentality is if you win on a lesser bet, you're actually losing because you should have bet more. Right.
Yeah.
And that's that mentality. Brian's leaving with more money than he showed up to the track with. It's just not the kind of money that Ralph and Tony are making betting on the actual odds.
Yeah.
It's just funny that that's losing to a gambler. But to me, somebody who is not a professional gambler, gambles very sparingly on a trip or something, It's like you leave with more than you came with. You won.
Yeah. Have you also noticed? I think it's in this scene where it's really displayed. The way in which Tony and Ralph cheer the horse on is very different. Tony says things like, come on, girl, do it, whatever. Ralph says, you fucking nag. Come on, you fucking nag. Like, it's how they also talk to women. I think there's something there. Am I reaching? I don't know. There's something about it.
Not at all.
Dead on, Jordan.
Yes, and let's put a big circle around what you just said and come back to it at a future point.
Yeah,
great pull. Tony's got no money for that medical stock, but he's got money to bet on these horses. By the way, I'm sure Carmela is not going to be happy if she knew about this. Tony comes home and offers to, when he gets the silent treatment, and there's multiple bouquets of flowers, by the way, here in. Carmela's just living amongst him, not responding to anything he's saying. He says, I came into some cash. If you want to buy that stock. The only thing she says on her way up the stairs, it's split. We missed it.
Yes. Out. Which after our last episode where stock splitting came up, I finally had someone explain to me what this is.
Good.
Actually, so friend of the show, Craig, said I had the wrong idea of what stock splitting means. So stock splitting is in fact bad. Well, sort of. What it means is this. It means that a company that has stock that is publicly traded is doing well and issues more stock, more shares. So everyone who has X number of shares, there's now more shares that exist. So the number of shares that you have are worth less.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So you don't want it then after the stock has become diluted. You wanted to get in early and then sell it before it splits.
Right.
So good for the company. Right. Issuing more shares likely means that they're doing well and they have more shares they can issue. But for the people that are buying the stock that have the stock initially, stock splitting is bad. So she is no longer interested in this venture because it's already blown up. It already exploded.
Well, thank you for that, Jordan.
That underlines actually what Tony said about Carmela. She's a smart woman, which means she had the right idea that they should have gotten in then.
Correct. And Tony is like, well, I guess what's becoming overt in this episode and how it's structured is Tony's betting on the wrong horse, right? He should be investing in his wife, right? That's where his money and his attention should be, but it's not. It's on this horse.
Yeah. Well, there you go. For anyone who listens to our Hit is a Hit coverage in season 1 and was like, these fucking idiots don't know what a stock split is, bro. Now we know. Thank you. And you know,
yeah, right. Well, someone specifically listened to that episode and said, Jordan doesn't know what a split is. And I didn't. And I haven't listened to that episode of ours in a long time, but I think I kind of even said I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, we were like, I don't know what that means, but probably bad.
But now I do.
Yeah, very good.
Thanks, bros.
Bobby. We never see this side of Bobby. I'm fascinated by this little scene here where he goes to the bar.
This was so good.
Yeah, I love this. This is a fun bit of action in the midst of this. He's influencing the union election. They want to elect this guy that is not going to cooperate. The union guy sitting at the bar it's suggested that the guy that they have in there now is been skimming pensions for 30 pensions have been ripped off for 30 years, which is a lot of how the mob makes their money with unions. They rip off the pension funds. And this is fun. Everything Bobby says here is purposeful. He's a good gangster when he wants to be. He's just more kindly about it in some ways, which is fun in a scene where you're threatening somebody's life over an election. But one of the first things he says, I saw your caravan out there. Nice car for a family. Great thing to say to someone you're about to threaten. We know you have kids.
Yep. It's a great scene.
Yeah.
I was surprised because it was the great turn by the actor, by the way. Really does a nice job. I was like, what does Bobby Bacala like sound like or look like when he's being threatening? Because it was clearly an intimidation scene from the moment he sat down. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is really cool. It's like jovial threatening. I was like, oh yeah, this friendly guy, he sat down, he had a drink with me, but everything he said had two meanings. And the implication was like the actual what was being said was so pleasant, but the undertone of that was just like, I'll blow your head off and I'll kill your family was basically what was said.
Yeah. It's really something. This is it's like I said, and it's also interesting because it's not something we see out of Bobby, but for the most part, it's fun to see these characters use their strengths the way they are able to. Like Bobby just coming off like an average Union Joe at the bar, who, by the way, is just threatening to murder your entire family, but just he's having he has such a casual way about it. This tactic wouldn't have worked if Tony had sent Bobby to intimidate Gloria this way in season 3. He had to send Patsy for that, this ugly, abrasive gangster to be like, hey, this is the last face you're going to see, and I'm going to kill you. This is Bobby just, hey, I'm a nice guy at a bar, and I noticed all this stuff. It's good. It's just so good. I love seeing his talent applied this way.
Yeah.
Bobby is a piece of shit like the rest of them.
Yes.
These guys are, and also what the mob does, this is also, interestingly, importantly, one of the only things the mob has left now, the influence on public sector unions. So Junior needs this influence. He needs this money. These are desperate times for him. And so he needs this work done. And it is weird. It's funny. It's charming. It revitalizes Bobby. It revitalizes Bobby to go and threaten a guy's life and implicitly threaten his children, when what we're concerned about in terms of Bobby and his life is his life and his kids.
Yeah.
And their family unit. It's weird. It's The Sopranos complexity and irony at its best.
Well said. Next scene, Adriana being very sweet and loving the second Chris gets through the door. It's I don't know. I think it's the kind of greeting every working man would enjoy, and it's nice. She's just very affectionate and sweet, but there's something else to it, right? No one's coming at it with a direct agenda here. She's stressed out. She's nervous. I'll make you some eggs. You want some eggs? Sure, whatever. And drops this idea about moving to California, which Chris immediately throws cold water on. I hate it out there. She starts with this, quote, negative shit. Someone could have it out for you and you wouldn't even know it. And what the fuck is this? Chris is getting increasingly anxious. I had that bird watching over me when I got made, so I'm already under a whatever you call it, possibly.
Right. I like that came back around.
Yeah. So
articulate as ever. Yeah. I'm already under a whatever it is, possibly.
Yep. And I just love you. Well, if you love me, stir my eggs. Adriana's not getting anywhere. This is very frustrating. The dialogue itself is funny, but what's happening here is very sad. This is Adriana scratching and clawing for a way out. Characters planning for some kind of exit that may or may not happen. It's sad, and it is bleak. Who's going to find their exit and how and why? Who's locked into what? It's tough. It's tough. Vito, Patsy, Ralph, and Eugene take over the office in the Crazy Horse. Adriana can't do anything about it. They go in there. Vito breaks her chair. We'll come back to that. They all laugh at Vito. I love Junior quoting Mr. Rogers as he's putting his sweater on. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and I'm rotting in that courtroom. And he's watching the news, and I die laughing at this every time. I've seen it 100 times, but when that cartoon comes up, and it isn't great, he just like, the fuck. But these courtroom artists aren't great. They're having to do it very quickly, and they're as Bobby says, was it Bobby who says if they were great, they'd be in a museum, right? So I'm fucking fodder for cartoonists now.
Isn't it like such a perfect affront to Junior's sense of dignity?
Yeah,
it's just like a bad drawing,
Well, that's it. He's watching the news, and that's what I wanted to ultimately mention about this, Paul, is that he's watching the news, and the headline that's being talked about underneath the picture of the drawing is that they outlined financial irregularities at Comley Trucking, which might be a source of concern considering that Junior's on trial for his life. But Junior is a character, most of all, driven by insecurity and his sense of dignity and his sense of pride and his image. He's looking for how he's being put out there on the news, not what the actual news is. And he's not happy with this art. Of course, that's what he latches onto, right? Also interesting that we spend so little time in the courtroom while this trial is going on. Like, this is an ongoing thing. He's at the courthouse every day. It's a major RICO case. The writers could have very easily made this season a courtroom drama season. And they didn't, because we don't need to spend time in the courtroom. He's guilty. Spoiler alert, folks. He's guilty of the RICO. he's guilty of leading a criminal conspiracy.
Right. Yeah.
It's about how it affects him and what it means for the character emotionally and in the sense of the world. So I like that we're not spending a ton of time in the courtroom, just kind of touching down on it and seeing what Junior's life is like outside of it. But this is an interesting development, him and this cartoonist. Bobby assures Junior that he took care of that thing. And Junior says, good. All that moping around. It's good to have you back, essentially, is the sentiment there. Bobby starts talking about Janice and how Janice has been a source of comfort. She's been great with the kids, cooking, bringing food over.
Yep.
And
Junior's not having it. Not having it.
Janice? He starts lifting the weight. Since when? Everyone usually steers clear of her food.
You think I would unleash her on shellfish?
Yep. And he starts describing this lasagna. I thought Karen's was good, and Junior again identifies the dish, identifies the wife by the dish, with the basil leaves right under the cheese, which, by the way, I've made Carmela's lasagna in the way this is described, and it's delicious.
Yeah, that sounds so good.
Yeah, little bits of sausage and layer of basil leaves on.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a Sopranos book. It's kind of a cookbook. It's like Entertaining with the Sopranos that I have. There's a couple recipes in there. Carmela's lasagna is one of the recipes, and I've made it before. It's quite tasty.
That sounds just great. Yeah.
Bobby says, come on, you always think the worst of everybody, Junior. And my response was, and this is the one time you should probably listen.
Yeah. Exactly.
Junior has had Janice clocked from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Fine. Enjoy. I think Junior says something to the effect of, enjoy your lasagna. Just don't come running to me. Junior's like, okay, well, all right. I got enough shit to worry about. Have fun with all that. And then poor Murf, there's some kind of crashing sound off screen. Junior just looks angry for a second. Go see if he's all right. Poor Murf. Poor fucking Murf.
Yeah, man.
So funny.
Oof.
Cut back to the crazy horse. We're in the back office. Adriana's complaining about all the time everybody's spending in the building and griping to Christopher. She goes to sit down as they're having this discussion, and Vito's broken via the fact that Vito broke the chair. She collapses. Christopher laughs at her just as hard as Vito was laughed at. Real sensitive stuff. And doesn't go to check on her. He's just eating, what is he eating? Pork rinds or chips or something.
It is funny. It's miserable,
hilarious.
but it's very funny.
Oh, and by the way, we're going to Tony and Carmela's for Sunday dinner. I don't care if your mother's dying. Poor Aid. It's just piling on, and she has zero control over anything that's happening around her.
Right.
Zero control. We're going back to the courtroom, and this scene is great. Junior just gives the artist a Maloika. I bet the actor's audition, the actor who's playing the courtroom artist, I bet his entire audition was, all right, just swallow nervously. And they probably cast him off of that because he just had to make eye contact with Dominic Chianese, who's glaring daggers at him. I love that. Can you imagine being that cartoonist and this mob boss on trial? Is
Yeah.
so fucking funny. Aid is at the mall, and Harris and San Severino get her in the car. They mention a name, Giovanni Kogo. We know that Giovanni was dragged into the back of her club. She heard the name Giovanni. We don't know who this guy is, but the feds are on to whatever it is. And she doesn't snitch on Giovanni, but they give her almost like a sick, inverted version of what Melfi does to Tony in therapy. Whereas Melfi's looking out for Tony's own good. This silence is going to cause Adriana to elicit something that is not for her own good.
Ooh.
So they give her that's
nice.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And she doesn't say anything about this guy that they roughed up in the basement. She keeps omerta on that, but she does give them something because they're waiting there with their hand out, like Tony's going to be in a subsequent scene, or in the previous scene with Bioma. He just has his hand out, waiting for Ralph to give him more money. And it's rough, but she gives him something about Patsy's suit operation. See, how hard was that? Yeah, it only took this woman becoming completely unraveled at all parts of her life for her to give that to you. Hope you do something good with it, Harris. Mm-hmm. It's rough. It's rough. But the point is she's been beaten into a form of submission where she is cooperating on some level, trying to give them something at this point. Cut to the kitchen of the Baccalieri residence. Bobby's smiling. How was your day? It was good. I'm having a good day. He's the most jovial we've seen him since Karen passed away. Mm-hmm. Janice, for good or ill, is behind it and got him on track. They talk about celebrating. We should celebrate. Let's go out. Vesuvio, it takes too long. The kids like Chinese. Janice passed out from MSG once, so that's out. Yeah, and out comes Karen Ziti. This is Janice's test. Is he over this, or is he just having a good day? Bobby's not ready to eat that yet. So this is now a symbol for Bobby's ability to move on now, this Ziti. Is he going to eat it? When is he going to eat it?
Yeah.
And Janice understands for the time being and puts it back in the freezer.
So she's made some headway, but not where she wants to be yet.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Progress, though, for her. Terrible progress for Bobby. Tony and Ralph in Aid's office. She comes in. Oh, just a minute, hon. Has to leave her own office. Can't manage her own club. Tony and Ralph doing good business here. They're resolving something. They don't get along. They're not super friendly, but they make money together. Tony and Ralph, that's the constant. Whatever it is they're talking about, they figure it out amicably. They're making money. That's Ralph's thing. That's why he's still around. Mm-hmm. Then they have this chat. How's our girl? Our girl. She got a hot tendon. Ralph's complaining about the vet bill. It's always something, quote unquote. Tony suggests titanium shoes. So this is interesting. Tony, after having that scene with the awkward payout, which I didn't actually mention when we were in the scene, but where he just holds his hand out now the second time expecting money. Yeah. And so couple that with now Tony's language. Oh, our horse. How's our girl? Right. More shifting of ownership and property here.
Ralphie clearly resents this.
Yeah.
Too. So it's a good transition into the next scene when Ralphie pawns it off on him.
Yes, exactly. He's at home with some girl getting served a meal in bed. And this poor girl, whoever she is, no clue what she's doing.
Get out, lady. Get out.
Very evocative to me of Ralphie watching the Gladiator movie, having Tracy get him a fresca just being served. And
right.
You know, he's nice enough on a moment to moment basis, but get out, lady. The maid calls.
This isn't an accident. Sorry, this isn't an accident. What Jordan said earlier, Tony betting on the wrong horse. There are these troubles in his marriage. It cuts from this scene to when Tony gets the call, and he and Carmela are quite chilly with one another. They're not. He's trying to get her attention with this Churchill thing. She doesn't want to hear it. They're divided, whereas Ralphie is getting this luxurious serving in bed from his scantily clad girlfriend. It's deliberate.
The horse is sick. The vet bill hasn't been paid, so the vet isn't going to treat the horse until he gets some money. Ralphie laments, no compassion for the fucking animal. It's curious. And rather than get up and take care of this, he does the passive aggressive thing. Oh, it's our horse now, right? It's our horse. Tell him to call this number, and gives him and cut to Tony's house. as Paul said, chilly is one word to describe this. Certainly, they're not talking. Carmilla's still giving him the silent treatment. She goes into the bathroom, doesn't shut the door, puts on the hair dryer while he's watching a movie. Carmilla, can you please shut the door? Carmilla, can you please shut the door? I think she has to hear him at that point and just still doesn't shut it. They're needling each other here. This is just not, things are just not good at home. This is not a good period for them right now.
Right.
The call comes in. I laughed a little bit when the call came in, even though we're obviously, this is sad that Pyomai is having an issue and is sick, but I had to laugh because just how random is this? Some crying maid calls you, the horse is sick. What the fuck are you talking about? And Tony has to take a second to figure out who this is. The horse is sick. The Pyomai. Tony, of course, is more compassionate to animals than Ralphie and actually cares on some level. So he gets up and starts getting dressed. Carm finds out now about the horse, which is not good given everything that's going on. She wanted the stock. She wanted more financial transparency and security from Tony. And he's given all this, we don't have it on hand, etc. You bought a racehorse. I love the line she gives here. What, it followed you home? Very funny, but the horse is sick. He's got to go take care of it. This sucks. It's not going well for Tony and Carmella. They're at a particular low point here. This is not good. And Tony has to do something about the horse, but the secret's out. This scene with Adriana doing heroin is just so sad. So sad. I feel terrible for her. It's so well acted. She's soaking wet from the rain. Just rain. Her whole parade has been rained on this entire episode, and she's just broken here and has to give in.
Right. Yeah. And coincides, I think, with the statement that the vet has given the horse something for the pain.
Yeah.
Right. And Adriana, of course, is shooting up heroin for her own kind of pain. So there's a clear parallel being made there.
Mm-hmm. Tony shows up at the stable. He's a little pissed at the vet. You better hope she's all right. Love the idea of threatening a vet over the health of an animal. Just doctors can't guarantee that, but Tony he cares about the horse, man. He goes in and sits there. It's a beautiful tableau in such a bleak and sad episode. He's comforting the horse. He pets her. It's just me, girl, relax, petting her, being sweet. The goat comes in, this vicious goat that Tony was warned about, the goat checking in on its friend, the horse. I love this sweet little, it's like out of an old movie, and then cue the song from the old movie, Rifle Pony and Me, sung by Dean Martin. And we cut to black. Any final thoughts on this last sequence, how this episode wraps up all of these various threads, and final thoughts on the episode, Pi Oh My?
I so appreciate this ending tableau. It kind of makes me sort of think about Tony's relationships with animals in general. He has a gentleness with them that he can't seem to find for most people. I wonder if it brings him back to a state of peace or back to a part of his childhood. I guess I'm not really sure, or maybe I don't know enough yet. But Paul has mentioned, I think, 2 or 3 times this episode that this is his safe haven from like the world around him being in such upheaval. And it seems like Tony seeks out, he has these relationships with these young women, particularly that like need help. There's, Gloria, there's Irina before that. He wants to be able to take care of these people. And I think with Irina in particular, I don't know. There's some complicated things brewing in my head that I think I need to see more episodes to really articulate. But like, he wants to take care of someone in the way that he gets to take care of this horse in this moment. Like, this is something simple that he understands and brings him comfort as well. Also important to note that the goat might not have had a great reaction to Ralph, but the goat doesn't seem bothered by Tony's presence at all. In fact, all the creatures in Tony can exist in this space totally peacefully because the goat recognizes that Tony is at peace here and is bringing peace to the discomforted Pyomai. I don't know. There's a lot to take in there. I think I'll have a thesis for you by the end of the season. For now, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on there.
So one of my favorite plays is Equus by Peter Schaefer, and he asked the question in that play of what use is grief to a horse, and it brings up how a horse, like other animals, is a symbol. The ducks were symbolic. A couple episodes ago, we talked about how the use of Christopher Columbus at this point in history is really more symbolic. And what you can do with a symbol is project what you want onto it. The horse isn't going to complain because it's a horse. And so I think that's part of the haven, how they're taking shelter from the storm together. And the storm is what's out there in the world, society, the pressures that are too much for people, particularly Adriana, who buckles under it in the sequence before. And yeah, I think it's powerful, it's interesting, it's still bleak in a certain way, but it's fascinating to see Tony smile at the end, this innocent smile that I have not seen him this simply happy since he was in the pool in the pilot with the ducks. And I don't think it's a coincidence. There'll be more to say on it, like Jordan said, as we move forward, because this is going to be threaded throughout the season. But a bleak episode, brilliantly rendered. Like, I think, Chris, you're quite right. Telltale Mozzarella, there's a lot of setup here, but it is intriguing. And I do love this image that it's brought to at the end.
Well said. And I agree with everything you guys said and more. I think that the fact that Tony has so much trouble dealing with the women in his life who are way more complicated than farm animals. That's even though they're both essentially treated as livestock to some degree in this world, this microcosm that the Sopranos, the family, there's a sense of ownership over the women, right? That we've talked about before in the episodes, particularly University. That was a big idea, is where the line is between human being and property when it comes to women in this universe. So it's sweet in a way, this ending, because yes, Tony himself is very at peace and relaxed here. Who does he constantly look up to? Who does he talk about all the time? Gary Cooper, the strong silent type, the cowboy, the old westerns, the guy who just did what he had to do. Tony is able to be a provider and a protector and make this horse and this goat feel safe in this barn amidst this terrible storm. That's not a feeling he is able to provide his wife right now, the feeling of security and love and comfort. And that's the storm that awaits outside. But for this moment in this ending, Tony has found where he can be his Gary Cooper, and that's why he's so at peace. But unfortunately, Gary Cooper ain't gonna, being Gary Cooper for this quote unquote wrong horse, is not going to get the trust signed and make things right back at home. So yeah, what an episode. It's an unsettling, unpleasant, unhappy season. We're 5 episodes in. I can see why this might be off-putting as a season already for some, and who knows where it's going. Yeah. Right. There's a lot coming, but it's not, I don't want to say it's not watchable. It is. It's just, it's
very watchable.
It's still a great show. This is not a complaint. This is not saying the show took a dip in quality. That's not what I'm saying. It's a brilliant season. It's beautiful so far. Sure. It's just, I would have a harder time marathon watching season 4 than I would the others so far.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to get into a big idea this late in the episode, and this is a conversation better served for later in the season, I imagine. But I think part of the darkness that is here, and I've heard you two talk about this, is that while the show still has this philosophy of exploring existential themes, the toxic sludge that we're starting to take on in season 4 is nihilism, right? And dark ruminations about that subject in particular. And this episode is undeniably that. I don't know that if that's forever, and I don't know season 4 that well to be able to make any further comment. But yeah, it's becoming a harder show to watch, not any less rewarding, but more emotionally demanding.
Agreed. Well said. And with that, that's Pie Oh My. We are moving up quickly through this season. It's blowing fast. I know these always go by fast, but I feel like this one even more so than usual. Everybody Hurts is the next episode. That is a personal favorite of mine, one I always look for. I know I say that a lot, so what the fuck does it mean? I always say, yeah, the next one, that's one of my favorites, because they're all one of my favorites. But there is a story thread in Everybody Hurts that makes me smile even just thinking about it, and I can't wait to cover it with you guys. Great episodes coming up. Next couple, man. Oof. All right, and with that said, I'm Chris D'Amato.
I'm Paul Mancini. And
I'm Jordan Hugh.
And I'm going to shut the door on this episode, everybody. Thank you so much. Got myself a gun.